Welcome back to the History of Rock Remix Edition. His name is Shim. He is the rock star.
His name is Brandon. He is the DJ. Class is in session.
That it is. It's the Remix Edition, which means that we're talking about things kind of other than rock, although we will cover things about rock and roll here in the Remix Editions. But today we're going to be talking about Modern Family as it debuted about 13 years ago. It was September 23rd, 2009 when that show debuted. And then we're going to get to some underrated TV shows. I have this weird thing with TV shows where I would get hooked on one that wouldn't quite get the numbers to be guaranteed it's coming back for a second season, so I'd have to track where they were. Is it going to be a mid-season replacement? So we'll get to that here in the second segment. And then coming
Is that like
here,
a Twin Peaks sort of thing where the show was so bent that you'd be like, this might not get picked up for a second season?
No. It's really just that not enough people are watching that particular show.
But doesn't that mean that it's probably not a good show?
But see, here's the thing. These shows have incredible cult followings. All the shows that are on my list here are ones, well, except for one, they now have diehard fans. It's just, it didn't cater to the masses. And I guess that's how my brain functions, is it's not like catering to the masses. And then, of course, we're going to get to 5 fast questions before we wrap up this episode. But talking about the masses, I do have to give the shameless plug here of the YouTube channel because I've been putting a lot of time and effort into this thing, and I was kind of texting Shim over the past few days as I'm watching the numbers constantly go up and up and up, and it's gotten to the point now where, as we're recording this is Monday, September 19th, I'm averaging more than 500,000 views every 2 days on this damn channel, and it's awesome. It's exciting. So go over there. If you're here watching on Spotify, or if you are over on Apple or Google, make sure you check out our social medias. Make sure you check out at The Real Brandalorian. That's where you can find me on YouTube or on Instagram. You can find Shim. His YouTube channel is Shimon Moore. And then Instagram, it's just at Shim. But for him, look at the blue check mark right there.
Yeah, look for that blue check mark. And but dude, seriously, congratulations. You've earned it. Everyone's been watching, and more hats. And I'm lucky to be working with you, man. So thank you very much.
We're taking this to the moon, Shim. We're going to the moon, right, baby. Me and you, buddy.
Let's get into it. Let's pick it up. Let's do it. All right. So you're starting this one.
Yeah. So we got Modern Family. It debuted September 23rd, 2009. So 13 years ago. The show ended after 11 seasons on April 8th, 2020. Which was funny because that ended it right before COVID hit, because I think they came back and did some stuff during the big part of COVID when everybody was learning how to do Zoom and things like that, and the family was trying to stay connected through Zoom and stuff like that. So the show won 22 Emmy Awards, and that is from 75 nominations. This thing was an award powerhouse. It also won 6 Writers Guild of America awards. So we're going to be diving into Modern Family. Quick side note, though, before we start. I believe that we were on the elevator with the girl that played Lily. Are you familiar with Modern Family?
I am familiar with Modern Family. I binge watched the first 4 seasons when I first got Hulu. So I was very, and the first 4 or 5 seasons were epic. But no, you got on the elevator with Lily?
We were staying at the Disneyland Hotel, and we were leaving, maybe? I don't know. But it was myself, my wife, and my daughter, and we're in the elevator, and then this girl, and I'm assuming her mom, comes in, and, we ride down all the way to the bottom, then we go our different ways, and all of a sudden my wife pulls me to the side, and she's like, I think that's the girl from Modern Family. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So then, of course, it becomes a mission for me. I got to find out if it's the girl from Modern Family. So as they're walking ahead of us, I'm walking around trying to not be completely obvious that I'm trying to figure out who this girl is, and staring her down to see if it's actually the girl from Modern Family. And the looks that I got, I think, I think it was Lily from Modern Family.
What's the name of the girl who is the oldest?
Haley.
Oldest in the family? What is it?
Haley.
When the only reference that I have is that when I first started another band after Sick Puppies, it was called Screaming at Demons.
Yeah.
It was a terrible idea. terrible idea for a band. Had one song. Anyway, so the people that I was hanging out for that period of a few months, which I do not hang out with anymore, we're at a house party that was kind of like a frat party, which wasn't my scene. And there was all these random people there. And I remember in the corner seeing a girl who looked like Haley, but she was there by herself, just sitting there by herself with a drink, kind of looking around awkwardly. And I'm like, that can't be her. If it was her, there'd be people around her.
Yeah.
Right? That's like a big celebrity. And then I went off and did something else and came back. And then I saw that girl, like the back of her head, and she was leaving. And I was like, dude, that girl looked just like the girl from Modern Family. And someone said, yeah, that was her. She came in for like 2 minutes, canvassed the party, and went, yo, this party sucks, and bounced.
She didn't want to hang out with screaming at demons.
No. We were like, it was, and she was right. It was a horrible party. I left shortly afterwards because I was like, what the fuck is this? This is a weird fucking party. It's like Hollywood Hills
awkward
thing, looking out over the thing with a whole bunch of greasy motherfuckers and guys that, all that bullshit. But that's the only time. That's the closest I ever got.
Well, it's closer than mine. I mean, I was in an elevator, but so one of the things that we like to do here at the first part of these episodes is, did it translate over in Australia? Obviously, you were here, but do you know of people in Australia, maybe your wife or friends or family, that back in Australia watch it? Because it feels like it's a very American show.
Nah, it was a monster. It did well over here. Yeah, because it was a universal message. It was about families dealing with stuff. Just because it was called it's the funny thing is, it dealt with things like the teen angst stuff, the paying the rent, stupid kids, bad neighbors. There wasn't really anything that was like flag waving, civil rights, guns, expressly America stuff. It was all pretty much just family stuff. That's why it makes sense with the next point that you're about. It was called Modern Family. It wasn't like it was called what?
My American Family. That was the original title for the show. So you can tell why they did. But then again, things get a name change all the time, where they could have very easily gone in and changed a name for a different market. I mean, we found that out with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Over in the UK, it was...
That's right, yeah.
Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. It wasn't Ninja Turtles. Yeah. So they
which
don't
really
have an
is
issue.
kind of... and that one really is bizarre because the defining factor of these turtles is that they are ninja.
Yeah.
They practice ninjutsu. Yeah. It's not like they've got... Yeah. So, but at the same time, I can understand why American Family might have looked at it and gone, well, we could just call it Modern Family, and then we've got all of these other territories that it'll just naturally translate to, and that was a fair thing. I don't think it would have made a difference in Australia because we've been plagiarizing American culture since there was American culture. But it makes sense that they would have gone with that.
Well, we're going to get to remakes of of Modern Family that were done in other countries, which are really hilarious.
I did not know about that.
And I also think that Modern Family it summed up the show brilliantly, because you had sort of the standard mom and dad, which was Claire and Phil, and then you had the gay couple who adopt a daughter, and then you had Jay and Gloria with their son, and the age gap there, and she's from another country, and so it truly encompassed a lot of the way that families are.
Everyone.
And that's why I think Modern was a really, like, that was the perfect the perfect way to sum up the show in the title.
Yeah, I think for Australia, when we heard the thing Modern Family and we saw that there was a gay couple on the first episode, that was what we got from it. It was wasn't it? This is modern. This is definitely cutting edge modern. Like, they got a gay family in the first episode, regular characters. Like, that's kind of modern.
For me, the modern one was more the Jay and Gloria family. The age
really?
gap.
That shit's been going on. Oh, come on. Old wealthy guy marries young beautiful. That's not modern. That's age old archaic. Come on, men have been doing that forever.
No, men have been doing that forever. But I saw that as more of an isolated thing. That like, at least myself growing up, I knew more gay couples than I did a rich dude that married a younger woman. And now, of course, this is vastly before I was watching 90 Day Fiance. So that whole dynamic is huge now. Yeah. But that's what the way that I saw it is because I grew up around gay couples far more frequently than I did with the old guy that married the young girl.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I guess I should say woman. Girl makes it sound creepy.
That does sound creepy.
Yeah.
So let's move on. Going back into the show now, right, from Modern Family, the camera crew originally were meant to be part of the plot, which I think would have been very interesting. A fictitious filmmaker named Gert Flortvi was going to travel from the Netherlands to live with Jay as a teenage foreign exchange student friend of Manny's. That would have been pretty interesting. It wouldn't have lasted long. That wouldn't have been as sustainable, but it's got a little bit of a How I Met Your Mother vibe, almost.
Well,
yeah, I like it.
So they did have some stuff written out for this character, and I gave you that name to pronounce because it's. I'm not even going to try. You did. I thought you did fantastic. You nailed it. It's exactly how you say it. So he was going to have a crush on Claire. Mitchell was going to find him handsome, but it was ultimately decided this was all unnecessary to the plot, so they just completely scrapped the idea. And this reminded me of when in The Office, the later seasons after Steve Carell left, they brought in the camera crew, and they became a part of the plot where Jim was off in Philadelphia, and this one guy was friends with Jim and Pam, but really he's got the hots for Pam. And it was so stupid. It was not necessary. It was so different from what you expected from the show. I hated it. I did not like it at all. The only thing that was enjoyable about it is the guy that played the cameraman, or the boom mic guy that had the hots for Pam, plays one of the fucking funniest characters ever on Silicon Valley. The guy is fucking hilarious. I'm telling you. I
don't know that one.
I got to look up his name. In Silicon Valley, his character is just he's the guy. He's all about the 3 commas. He wants to be a billionaire.
3.
You get 3 commas when you have a billion, right? There's 3 commas in 1 billion. And so he's the guy. He has this bottle of tequila. It's called 3 commas or something. Or it's in Spanish or something, maybe trace something that's whatever.
Right.
It's just, he's fucking hilarious, man. He's so funny. And he's such a dipshit.
And The Office was where he got his first crack?
I don't know if it was his first crack, but I do remember that he was the guy that it was the same actor that played that role.
I do remember vividly when that happened. When he crossed over, it was like the fourth wall was being seriously broken, and I remember thinking this is where the show goes downhill forever. Yeah. It was the last season or something. It was like they're really running out of ideas. And it's time to finish. Yeah, going back to Modern Family.
Well, it's good. Yeah, because one thing.
Sorry.
One thing that what you just had mentioned about, I just lost my train of thought as I'm trying to look up this guy's name. Go ahead, do the next one.
I was going to say, yeah. So the show Modern Family was pitched. This is something interesting. It was pitched to ABC, CBS, and NBC. CBS didn't want to commit to a single camera style mockumentary. NBC was already having success with The Office and Parks and Rec. So ABC ended up greenlighting the project as a result.
So the show's creators, Christopher Lloyd, that's not the Doc Brown from Back to the Future. I just found that out a couple years ago. I assumed that Christopher Lloyd, it was the same guy for the longest time. I assumed, I was like, wow, he's Doc Brown and he's producing all these shows. Like, that guy's
Let me know.
Shit.
I want to in the comments section right now, if you thought that Christopher Lloyd from all of these amazing sitcoms was Doc Brown from Back to the Future, please type yes, I thought that too, because I thought I was the only one.
No, I firmly thought that. So it was Christopher Lloyd and Stephen Levitan, and they would work on the show separately. They would each take half of an episode, and then they would work on it separately because they knew if they worked directly together, they would constantly argue over who had the final say. So it was just easier. You get your half, I get my half, that's it. And it worked out brilliantly. And look at the show that had countless awards.
I think that's fair enough. I've heard that the Red Hot Chili Peppers wrote songs like that for the first few albums.
Yeah,
they would come up with a beat.
Half-made pieces of shit.
Oh, come on, man. I want to dig myself out of that. I said a couple of things about Red Hot Chili Peppers that I'm not proud of. But like they would go away and they'd come back. And you got to admit, though, regardless of what you think about Red Hot Chili Peppers, they don't sound like anyone else. So at least they have a unique voice. Coming back to it, the show was recreated. Okay, here we go. The show was recreated for international audiences. In Chile, it was called Familia Moderna. Moderna or Moderna? How do you say it in Chilean? Moderna? Because that sounds like a pharmaceutical company.
I think it's modern, like modern. Moderna.
Moderna? Yeah. Familia Moderna, like familiar family. In this version, Lily isn't adopted. She is Mitchell's biological daughter after a drunken encounter, but Mitch and Cam had full custody.
So over in Iran, they did a remake of Modern Family. This was called Haft Sang in 2014. And again, I have no idea if I pronounced that properly. Mitch and Cam's relationship has turned into a heterosexual one. I mean, again, we're talking about Iran, not exactly progressive over there. And Haley is changed to a teenage boy so Dylan then becomes a close friend. Look up, it's HAFTSANG, Haft Sang. It looks like a serious show, dude. Because Modern Family, you see that's the pictures of the family and they're like smiling and they're all happy. But when you look up Haft Sang, it's like, whoa, like this has got to be some sort of a crime murder mystery or something going on here. These dudes are hardcore.
Hold on a second. I'm looking. Yeah, you're right. Actually, I'm looking at these images now. This is the show?
Yeah.
Yeah, this looks a little bit more this looks like it's about to become a murder mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of these people look dark. They're looking at the camera like, I'm going to come for you. What the fuck,
It looks like
man?
one of those shows that they'll turn into a novella for my wife to watch on the Spanish channel.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And did they explain one thing here? Did they explain why they changed Haley's character into a teenage boy? Is it because they're not supposed to have relationships at that age?
I don't know. I haven't. I was only able to find very surface information on some of these shows. Again, if you know the answer, if you're here on YouTube, comment below and let us know any of this info.
Please let us know. So this is interesting. All of the actors, we're going back to the American version now. All the actors made a pact that when awards season came, none of them were in leading roles. They were all in supporting roles. That is awesome. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Friends did that as well, didn't they? Do you remember about Friends?
I don't know if
Ross
did they make the pact?
They didn't. No, they didn't make a pact about leading actors versus supporting actors, but they did say when it came time, it was David Schwimmer who was considered the number one guy because he was Ross and Rachel and everything.
Yeah.
Exactly. He went in on like the third or fourth season when it was time to renegotiate because after the third year everyone goes and renegotiates, and he said we should all go in and negotiate as a team. If we go in and try to one-up each other and men are getting paid more than women or I'm getting paid more than Joey because I'm more at Ross and Rachel, he said, let's all go in and negotiate as a team. And that's why the seasons kept being so good and they lasted for so long, for 11 years, I think it was, on Friends, because they were equal and they all felt good and fair about it. There was no animosity. And everyone looked at David Schwimmer and said, sure thing, stupid. You're the only one getting a pay cut. And he was like, but he was the fearless leader and went in with a good head on his shoulders and he made a good call.
And you just made the point. I mean, he could have taken more money, but if there's animosity within the crew, the show might not last as long. So you might get that early bump in pay, but it's not going to pay off in the long run. And like teamwork makes the dream work, baby.
That's a good way to put it. Here we go.
All right, so back to Nolan Gould, who played Luke. He's a real-life genius. He's been a part of Mensa since he was 4 years old.
Wait a minute. Which one's Luke again?
The young son. The one, Phil's young son, the one who they play off is kind of stupid.
The redhead. He's a fucking genius, legit.
He's been a member of Mensa since he was 4 years old.
So why is he such a bad actor? Because he's not a good actor on the show, is he? He looks like
I thought he was great. I thought he was perfect
really?
Yeah. He played that sort of dopey, sort of not really knowing what's going on, just boneheaded kid. I thought he played it great.
See, wow, I would never have picked that. I'm so glad you told me that. All right. So The Broken Step was an improvisation by Ty Burrell, who plays Phil Dunphy. He does the gotta fix that step in season 1, and it carried through for the rest of the series. Did they carry that to the end of the series? He kept doing that. I remember it from the first season.
It was an ongoing thing. I don't think it was like every single episode, but it was one of those things that continued to carry on where got to fix that step, and people would trip on that step. Got to fix that step. Got to fix that step. And
I remember it. I'd forgotten about that, man. That's so funny.
And so speaking of Mr. Phil Dunphy, they didn't want Ty Burrell playing Phil Dunphy. He had just been in a show called Back to You. Now, if anybody remembers what this show is, either you're a huge TV nut or you're a big Kelsey Grammer nut or a Patricia Heaton nut, because they were the main stars on that show. It didn't even last a full season. The network didn't think that Burrell was going to be strong enough for a main character. So the show creators, Lloyd and Levitan, ended up mocking up a scene with Burrell alongside Sarah Hyland. She was the one that played Haley. that preview convinced ABC to hire him to play Phil Dunphy.
And I think he did a good job. What do you think? I think he's
my
good as the
favorite
everyman.
He's my favorite part of the
Really?
show. When I would get frustrated when, going through just everyday life as a husband and a dad and wanting to be able to see, like, I loved Phil Dunphy's perspective on life. I loved his joy of life. I loved his ability to have fun doing things just for the sake of doing it because it's fun. And I took a lot of that to heart, and I thoroughly enjoyed watching him, especially knowing that he was in the Dawn of the Dead remake with Ving Rhames where he plays an asshole. And it's hilarious.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. My favorite character was always the grandfather. His lack of fucks. His lack of fucks, I always appreciated. But the thing that I loved was that you had to wait for it. Was a slow burn with him where he would be that old man that was just grumpy or short, but then once every couple of episodes he would lay down a nugget of wisdom that would be like, when it comes to the things that matter, I've got this covered. Yeah. Like, and the bits, and that's the thing that I always liked. I was like, someone you can count on, someone, even when he would talk to Phil about how to be a man, how to be a dad, and it would be like, well, no one really has it figured out, but you got to follow your gut and all that sort of stuff. I always got the warm tingles when it came to those minutes.
Jim's got the warm tingles.
I got the warm and fuzzies, man.
And that's the perfect transition to the next segment. We're kind of going TV heavy today, and so our next segment is all about highly underrated TV shows that sort of have flown under the radar for most people. And this is a topic that I don't want to say weighs heavily on me, but it means a lot to me because, again, I somehow would land on these shows that I would love, and then for some reason, those were the shows that would struggle to stay on the air. First and foremost, I remember it from news radio back in the 90s.
Oh, God, I loved that show.
Love.
Yeah.
From Phil Hartman to Joe Rogan to Dave Foley to Maura Tierney. The whole cast was just awesome. And even Andy Dick. It's like the one thing I can watch Andy Dick in and not want to throw something at the television because him as Matthew was fucking hilarious.
Can I tell you the one time I met Andy Dick?
Yes.
It was fucking poetic. I was at the Roxy watching Papa Roach, right? I was able to talk. I was at the gym and I fucking got the message, Papa Roach, if you like this band, Papa Roach is playing at the Roxy in 1 hour. And I went, fuck yeah, I'm going to cancel my workout and go and hang out with the boys. So I went in, they're sold out. So I just walked up to the front and I was like, listen, is there any way I can talk to anyone that works on the crew? I know all the guys. And luckily, just blind luck, the woman who was working the desk was like, I know who you are. You're cool. Go ahead. And so I walked in, but I'm in like black pants and a black sort of t-shirt, really plain looking, right? I'm not dressed up for it. So I go in and I'm just standing in the corner or whatever, and I'm next to where the connecting thing of where the seats are for people who want to sit down and have a drink to where the pit is. And I'm just standing there and I'm leaning over and Andy Dick taps me on the shoulder. He's sitting there. And because I'm just standing there, he taps me and he says, "Give me a drink."
Thinking you were the bartender? Like you legitimately worked there?
Thought I was the bartender. Yeah, he thought I was the bartender because I was just wearing a black shirt. He must have thought I was a bartender. And I'm standing there and he taps me on the shoulder. He says, "Get me a drink." And I said, "I'm sorry, man, I don't work here." And he said, "You can still get me a drink." And I said, "I'm not getting you a drink." He was like, "Well, I don't like you either." And then he turned back to his friends. That was my moment with Andy Dick.
That's like that right there. If you could ever sum up what meeting Andy Dick is like from what I've heard from other people, that's the definition of what it's like to meet that guy. But that tells you how good. Bummed. That tells you how good news radio was. The fact that I could watch him as Matthew, the battles he would have with Joe Rogan and the guest stars. They had guest stars like Bob Odenkirk, Saul Goodman.
How long did it run?
I think it was 5. I'll double check this. But what really ended it was when Phil Hartman died.
Oh, of course.
They had
brought
in John Lovitz previously as a guest spot. And then they ended up bringing him back to replace Phil Hartman, and it was not the same. I'm seeing here.
Well, of course it's not the same. I mean, he was so perfectly dry. Phil Hartman was the best at that fucking dry 1950s cigar smoking Scotch fucking holding.
Oh my God. And I can't even believe I forgot the person who might be the best part of the show is Stephen Root, the guy that played Jimmy James, the owner.
Oh, yeah. There's all of them. See, so many people got their start on that show, and it amazes me. You're absolutely right, because I love that show when it started, and I remember you'd see them pop up in sitcoms for 20 years afterwards, right?
Yep.
You'd see them keep coming up, and I remember when I saw the lady who was Jim Carrey's wife in Liar Liar.
Mauritanian,
I just remember pointing at the screen going like, that's her.
Yep.
Yes. Like every time I'd see her, I'd think it was amazing.
Dude,
yeah, they were fantastic.
We got to mention the other two people that haven't been mentioned yet. We did have Candy Alexander, who played Catherine Duke, and then Vicki Lewis, who played Beth. Just brilliant on all sides. And this was one of those shows that for some reason had a tough time gaining traction. It just could not. I think it bounced around the schedule a lot. They had put it on. So remember in the 90s, Thursday night on NBC was the must-see TV. And then, but it bounced around, and that's what happened to the other shows that I have on this list of mine, which are Community, Scrubs, and Life. I expect people to know Community and Scrubs. Life, not so much. That's the one I've mentioned before with Damian Lewis, but that got hit by the writer's strike. Community, it was the same thing. It just wasn't quite getting the numbers. They shuffled it around the schedule. You weren't quite sure if it was coming back. Same exact thing happened to Scrubs, where all of a sudden it's not on the fall schedule, but it was going to be a mid-season fill-in.
See, that's an interesting thing because that didn't happen. In Australia, Scrubs was an overnight sensation. It was a monster from the beginning to the end. It was like it got put on. It might have been because we were more into kind of the quirky comedy or whatever, but it was put on Monday night or a Thursday night viewing, and it was a staple for fucking years and years and years. Yeah, like we there was no glitch in that. It was a hit from the very beginning.
Oh, and I love that show. And I said this before, is that like Bill Lawrence, the guy who's behind Scrubs, he's also the guy that's behind Ted Lasso. There's just something. There's a way that he makes shows. It's just brilliantly done. Although I want to go back to news radio, and I just remember there's one scene that reminds me of my radio days most, because obviously it's news radio. And first of all,
hold on a second. Do you think that you love news radio because of the radio aspect?
No.
Is that how much of that plays into it? No,
nothing. No. It's the storylines, it's the actors, it's the way that it was written, it's all of that stuff. It had nothing to do with and it just so happens that I ended up working in radio. But I remember one of the first things was there was a guy I worked with in Florida, and he didn't throw a fit, but he would always be like, "Did you notice they never had the sales staff on that show?" And I was like, that's what you're going to fucking complain about, is that they didn't have the sales staff on the show? What? So come to find out, that's in the first episode. I went and bought all the DVDs because you can't find it on streaming anywhere. So I have them all on DVD. And in the first episode, Dave Foley goes to the wrong building. He goes to the WNYX sales building. And they tell him, oh, you want the programming building. So that's why you never see a sales staff in news radio, because they're in a completely different area.
But do you think they did that so that they wouldn't have to bring sales into the show? Really? You think they actually said that at the beginning and were like, in case anyone's wondering, in case anyone wants to have a fit about why the sales staff isn't in the show, here's the beginning scene where it's like, here's your get out of jail free card of why sale. Do you think that's why they did it, or it just was...
I mean, I don't know, but I'm assuming that they probably had that conversation where they were figuring out, okay, so if that show, or we already have this staff. First of all, did you know Joe Rogan wasn't the original engineer? It was another guy. So when you go watch that first episode, Joe Rogan ain't in it. And I think they knew that they had a big enough staff to try to incorporate a sales aspect would have been too much. They wanted. I was going to say
the other thing is, who gives a shit about sales? Like, the only people who give a shit about sales are the people that own the radio station. Like, the guy that does sales in the show, who's going to care about him? You care about the on-air talent and the people that people who do sales.
WKRP did it right. They had their sales guys on the show. And that was done properly. So I'm getting sidetracked here because I got a couple of points here to make. So because this all relates to kind of this radio aspect of things, especially being a production director. There's a scene, actually I think it takes place almost over the whole episode, where they're plugging baseball is on the way. The season of baseball is right around the corner, and so it's Phil Hartman going, the crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, and it's them in Dave Foley's office producing this 10-second bit, and they just can't get it right. And then all of a sudden, Catherine Duke walks in, and she completely cuts out almost all of Phil Hartman's lines. And it's just a crack of a bat, a roar of the crowd, and you don't hear any, you just hear the sounds. And then it's like, baseball returns to WNYX. And that was it. And I was like, I've sat and I've had to sit with clients. I've had to sit with people who I work with who just want to nitpick every single little fucking thing. And I realized, dude, like the shit that you're changing doesn't fucking matter.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
None of it matters.
It's not going to fucking matter. If we can cut this down to 15 seconds, we're fine. But the shit that you want to put in here, and that scene resonates so much with me after the radio.
But do you think that scene would have driven other people insane, having to watch that and go, this is just driving me insane?
No,
do you think that most other people would have gone, these people are fucking crazy?
They did it brilliantly on the show where it's not worn out. They revisit it. Like something happens and then they come back to this scene where they're still working on it. Something happens and then they come back to this scene, and it gets to the point where all of them are sitting in the office and they're just like leaning back, falling asleep. They're just so frustrated because they can't get this thing to sound the way that they want it to. Now, jumping over to the sales aspect of things, it reminds me of an episode of The Office, and it's when the sales staff is catered to completely, and the rest of the staff is just being shit on by the sales staff. They're throwing their papers at their desk. The one girl, Angela, walks over to Phyllis, and she's like, I've emailed you 3 times. You can't come over to my desk? And Phyllis's response is, if I haven't had time to respond to your email, I don't have time to come to your desk. And it's like, fuck, that's my life. Because when all this stuff was going on was when I worked as a production director, and I've worked with some good salespeople. I've worked with some bad salespeople. And it's something that bothers me when it comes to this sort of aspect of things, is how when you cater to the salespeople, you wonder why the product suffers. Because the salesperson's there to sell the product. But the way that things have been done in radio is it's now been turned upside down, where, well, the salespeople are the ones that make us the money, so the salespeople need to be catered to. No. That's not the case. Everybody needs to be on equal footing. But ultimately, what goes on the air, that's the product. If that sounds like shit, or if what your sales staff is doing makes that sound like shit, then you're not going to be able to sell anything in the future. And it just it meant so much to me to watch this episode where the sales staff just treated everybody else like shit. And I'm like, yeah, like that's my life. Like that's what happens. Like every single day, the sales staff can get away with whatever they want because they're the ones that make the money.
Right. Do you think that the reason the show didn't connect the way that you were saying is just because it kept getting bounced around time slots, or because some of that humor and information was niche?
No, I think for news radio, I don't think any of that was really too niche. I think that it was they dealt with a lot of very broad topics, and I think it was truly that it just bounced around a lot. And it was the same thing with Scrubs here, because Scrubs, another one of those ones, it didn't have, they didn't just leave it on a spot. It bounced around. So it became when can I actually watch this thing, you know?
Yeah. Which really is a shame, because you've got people putting their life and blood and sweat into something, and it doesn't, and the only reason it doesn't connect is because of that one thing. That one thing, is just, if people don't know where to find it. Yeah. So the one that I have before we move to five fast questions. Have you ever heard of Gallivant?
No.
Jamie Lewis from thebasis.net sent me. I watched this at his house last year. I fell in love with it. It is a musical comedy series, half-hour episodes, based on it's based in medieval times with knights of the round table and princesses and magic spells and stuff. But it has nothing but modern jokes and modern commentary. And it's very niche and very bizarre and funny. And it has a few big actors in it. And the thing that I thought was amazing, you should go and check it out. Everyone should check it out, okay?
Oh, it's got Vinnie Jones.
Exactly. It's got Vinnie Jones as the number one henchman for the king, who later accidentally upgrades to being king. And it's like, how the fuck did that happen? And when you find out, it's kind of bent and backwards. And the queen is an absolute bitch. and she sings songs about just being a bitch. And she's like, I don't give a fuck about anyone. Like, so it's really, really funny. But I knew that I'd fallen in love with the show when they got 8 episodes. And then the people who were fans of the show protested the company, which I'm trying to look it up right now. I think it was put on, trying to find it. I don't know what station aired it, but the point
ABC.
is ABC. The fans actually wrote in when they said, we're not going to be giving a second season to this, or we're on the fence. And they said, please pick him up for another season. We love this show. We want it desperately. The opening number for the first episode of season 2 was a 10-minute epic about how they can't believe they got a second season. The whole song is literally saying, I can't believe they picked this up. I can't believe they let us do this shit again. And like the whole song, and it's fucking epic. It's not just a little ditty. It's a whole thing with dancing choirs and pirates swinging from the mains and falling into the ocean and monsters coming out of the sea and CGI. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And they knew when they got the second season, they said, we're never giving you another season. So just do whatever the fuck you want. Here's your budget. You've got your time slot. You got a few episodes, whatever. And so they took the second season was so much more epic than the first one because they literally knew it's over after this. We can do anything we want. So they had all sorts of weird shit in there. So that was, and I think that is one of the most underrated TV shows. I have yet to meet a single person who likes music, musical theater, or anything TV comedy related. No one's heard of it. I'm like, how have you not fucking heard of this? So check it out. All right, moving on.
I'm definitely going to have to check this out. It was actress Mallory Jansen who was in the show. She described it as the bastard child of Monty Python and the Princess Bride. If that doesn't sell you on the show, then it's definitely just not going to be for you at all. But it is time to move on here. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. It is time for 5 fast questions. Shim, you've got the questions. I've got the answers. Fire away, sir.
Number 1, what TV show did you quit watching and why?
The Walking Dead, because it got boring.
Number 2, what did you really learn in college?
How hard to throw a Super Ball in the quad to get 2 bounces off the wall.
Number 3, how can you tell someone isn't very intelligent?
They're always right.
Number 4, what song is stuck in your head right now?
Check the Level by Dirty Heads.
Number 5, what is your clumsiest injury?
God, I've had a lot. I broke my toe while doing a handstand, falling into a recliner. And that is 5 fast questions.
I'm trying to do the math on how you... Okay. You broke your toe.
So we'll start here. Like
doing a handstand. All right.
I was doing a handstand, so my feet are up in the air.
Yeah.
And I just did it for shits and giggles because I was bored. I was like 19. So I'm walking around the house on my hands, and I fell into a recliner, and my foot came down, blah, and it busted the toe in half. Went to the doctor, and it full on, it broke it in almost like an upside down V shape like this, like a chevron almost. And it was because when I looked down at my toe, I think it was the middle one, it was completely like wrapped over.
What does your doctor
like
have
that.
to say about that?
Don't do that again. I mean, we can't put a cast on it. It's a fucking toe. Yeah.
So you said The Walking Dead. I've never watched The Walking Dead. I've heard, because I'm not really into the horror thing. But you said, a lot of people said it was an amazing show, and then did it get really bad towards the end?
Well, okay, so I've heard it's gotten better. It was really slow early on. The thing that I always enjoyed about it is it was more about the relationships of the people, not the zombies. It's how are people going to act if some shit goes down and this actually happens? And then there was they had this really big story arc that was like one of the major moments in the comics where this dude just gets fucking blasted with a bat on the head. His eyeball pops out and shit. And they did that in the show. And then after that, I tried following the next season, and I was like, I can't. Like, there was a tiger, and somehow the tiger knew who to attack. Like, it was just weird. And It got
Sounds
boring.
like Lost.
Yeah, so I wasn't able to track The Walking Dead. And I called that scene too. So we would do on the morning show, we would do sort of predictions for major shows that we all watched together, like Game of Thrones. Yeah. We would do like a death pool. Who do you think is going to die this week on Game of Thrones? Same thing for Walking Dead. And I fucking called it, man. I said, so Negan was the guy with the bat who he's the one that ends up fucking killing Glenn. And I called it on the air. This was months before it aired. I said flat out, what's going to happen is it's going to show him stop in front of one of the cameras. We're going to be looking at him through the point of view of the person. He's going to slam the bat down, and you're going to see blood drip down the screen, and that's going to be the end of the season. And then they're going to pick it up, and we're going to find out who that happened to be when they pick up.
Is that what happened?
Season. It's exactly what fucking happened.
Is that because they did that frame in the comics? Did you see that from the or did you just?
I knew that they weren't going to answer. They weren't going to answer that question that season. Who he actually kills? They weren't going to do that because this is going to be the question that needs to be asked all summer until it comes back in October.
Right.
So. Right. And I think one of the problems with, I'm thinking of American Horror Story now, where these shows would come out in October because they were kind of horror themed. And then they would take a break over the holidays and then come back, and it's like I'm not vibing on this anymore. It's like springtime, you know. I don't want ghosts and goblins and shit.
Yeah,
so, but that was Walking Dead.
So you're going back to what did you really learn in college? I love it. It was basically nothing.
No, God. So this was when I was in community college in radio broadcasting school, and there was this kind of quad area outside the radio station, and we had this big window where we could kind of see everybody as they walk by between classes. And I don't even know how we ended up doing this, but myself and like 4 friends had a Super Bowl. And we were just saying if we could get it to bounce off that wall and that wall in one throw.
Wait a minute. Is a Super Bowl the small ones that are really rubbery, that are firm rubber, that just bounce super high? Okay.
Yeah. And we were just trying to see if we could get it to bounce off that wall and that wall in one throw.
That was it? That's wow.
We spent like an hour and a half doing it. And we weren't even high. We were sober.
All right, and the other one was, how can you tell someone isn't very intelligent? What was your answer again?
They're always right. Like, the inability to admit you're wrong is the biggest sign of stupidity to me. Like, everybody's wrong. Everybody is wrong.
My favorite one is always when someone says, I'm just the kind of person who, and then whatever they say afterwards.
Yeah.
If you ask them, if you were to ask them, are you the kind of person who does A or B? Then you can say, no, I'm probably the kind of person that does A. But if they just volunteer the information, like, just so you know, I'm the kind of person who blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, I always go back to that Shakespearean, methinks you protest too much. I always go to that one. I'm like, do you really need to tell everyone what kind of person you are? Shouldn't people know by now? Anyway, what song is stuck in your head right now? You said.
Oh man, it's Dirty Heads. Check the level. Check the level, cause something's coming over me. Check the level, cause something's coming over me. It's such a good fucking song, man. Oh, I got hooked on that. Cause remember, I told you just a couple weeks ago, I was in a music funk. Like there was nothing grabbing me, and I was on. So this is what's great about Spotify. Is that I'll find a song that I like, and then you can go to the radio station like that song. You can do it with like Pandora and things like that. But what I like about Spotify is you can actually flip through and pick certain songs and whatever you want to do. So I don't even remember how I landed on it. I think it might have just been on another playlist. And that song popped up, and the way that it starts out, it's got this kind of beat to it that also sounds like a 1930s radio soap opera almost, like the filters that they have on it, and it's just such a good song, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Go listen
Is that
to
new?
Dirty Heads. I don't think so. I think it's old.
I don't think so. Okay.
Excellent. Beautiful. Let me double check here before. Yeah, 2008 was when that came out. So go listen to Dirty Heads, man. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode.
Thank you, everyone, for hanging out. Thank you very much, Brandon, for your time and energy.
I'm trying, man. Go check out the socials, baby, at The Real Brandon Lorian. You can go to Instagram, you can go to YouTube, you can check out Shim. So YouTube for him is at Shimon Moore, or you can check him out on Instagram. That's Shim. Look for the blue check mark over there. Of course, we do have episodes dropping here. So this remix episode, these drop on Wednesdays. Regular episodes of the History of Rock drop on Mondays. Next Monday, we're going to be talking about Ozfest. Ozfest might take up 4 episodes.
That's amazing.
Because I went through sort of the beginning to the end, and then there was also an unreleased documentary of Ozfest that I found on YouTube, and I watched the whole thing, and I made notes, so I peppered that in there as well. So that's all stuff that we're going to be getting into, and I'm pretty sure that Ozfest will probably be 4 total episodes, but we'll see when we start recording it, which we're going to do here in a little bit. And then also don't forget, we got the shorts coming up as well. There's a lot of shorts that I've been putting up on my channels. Shim's got his stuff that he's doing, so make sure you check it all out and have you guys fantastic whenever you're.
And don't forget the merch. We keep forgetting to let people know we got some merch available with the cross-eyed bear, a couple of t-shirts, a couple of stickers, rocking and rolling. You can get those at the name of the website, which is what?
VivaLaMocha.com. There's your cross-eyed bear one right there. You can check
much.
that out. We also have just the History of Rock stickers and t-shirts as well. But on that note, thank you, Shim. Thank you, everybody, for checking us out. And we'll be back coming up
very shortly.
See, we have so much stuff coming out. Like, just check us out when
we're
back. So his name is Shim. He's the rock.
So you know what? I'll tell you what. Just hit the like and subscribe, and that'll let you know for us. Until then, his name is Brandon. He's the DJ.
Class dismissed.